Gym sessions and sweaty summer activities are back, which means more funky smells in your clothes because sweat leaves behind bacteria that causes those hard-to-remove odors. Clorox fabric sanitizer products are ready to zap the stink out of fabrics in your home by getting rid of 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria. Eliminate odors in every load or sanitize fabrics between washes with one of our fabric sanitizer products. Search fabric sanitizer at Clorox.com to learn more. When it counts, trust Clorox. Use as directed.
Want to hear some inside scoop? If your kids are as ready to go back to school as mine are, you gotta check out Kohl's. I got my daughters the cutest sew tops for under $18, JanSport backpacks for 25% off, and 30% off Levi's jeans for me. I even saved an extra 15% and picked up Kohl's cash. So, yeah, not sure who's more excited right now, me or the girls. Select styles. 15% offer ends August 15th. Levi's coupons do not apply. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest-running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. Specifically here, right now, at this moment, this is your next installment of Opposition Territory here at the PST Podcast Show. We are going to be getting into the Dallas Cowboys this week. Yes, I know, Philly sports fans, they may not be our favorite team, but quite frankly, they are an interesting team this coming NFL season, and we want to get into them because they are one of the Philadelphia Eagles' rivals here within the NFC East. So let's get into that discussion right now. And on this installment of Opposition Territory, again, getting into the Dallas Cowboys, we have one of our returning guests of the show. It is great to have him back. He is a poor, suffering Dallas Cowboys fan, but also he is the editor-in-chief for Blogging the Boys, and you can also hear his delightful voice on the SB Nation NFL show. I listen on Apple Podcasts, and you should listen on whatever podcast platform you're listening on now. Mr. RJ Ochoa. RJ, man, thanks for jumping on our Opposition Territory show this week.
Of course, Jeff. Great to be with you as always. Hope all's going well with you guys. Your neck of the woods. It's exciting that football's here.
Yeah.
The Cowboys have played a preseason game already, so everything is right where we want it to be.
Absolutely. Maybe for the Dallas Cowboys, in terms of Eagles Nation, you know, my family and I, we were down at the link. We were on the field yesterday for the first open practice, and that's probably going to be the highlight of my Eagles season. That's probably going to be it, RJ.
You know, I'm not as down on the Eagles as most people are. You know, you and I, we have some mutual friends that also cover the Eagles, and
right.
It does seem like there is this like theme of existential dread surrounding the team. I don't totally see it that way, and maybe I'm not as connected to it, and so I'm not as capable. But I don't think they're the worst team in the division by far. Like, I think there's a sizable gap between them and the worst team.
I think that's astonishing. I really do. And maybe that's a conversation for another day, because I really want to get into this Dallas Cowboys team with you, because I think I find this team, as I said in my intro, you know, being a Philly sports podcast here, you know, of course, we're not rooting for the Dallas Cowboys, but man, I think they're going to be a formidable team and a very interesting team this coming season. But we got to talk about Dak Prescott first, you know, first and foremost, getting into him. You know, Cowboys Nation, of course, excited to see him getting back into some shape and form this season, getting back on the field with his teammates to help take this team basically to another level. But now he's got the shoulder injury. He's probably going to be back sooner rather than later, and he might already be back for all I know. But I'm wondering if you think it might be fair, as some folks are actually saying, as I've seen on the interwebs, RJ, for folks to start thinking that Dak may be injury-prone here. What are your thoughts on that?
So I certainly get that, just because that's kind of the way the internet works, which is unfortunate. And, you know, I think it's also, you know, worth mentioning, and this is something we're obviously well accustomed to, but the Cowboys are going to continue to be are under a huge spotlight just in general because of the Cowboys, but they played in the Pro Football Hall of Fame game. Yep. So first team that everybody saw. You and I were recording on Monday. Their season of Hard Knocks kicks off tomorrow, so they'll be viewed by everybody. And then they play in the opening game. I don't know any team that's ever played in the preseason or the Pro Football Hall of Fame game and the season opener that obviously isn't even the defending world champions, like the Cowboys are not. And so and you factor in, they've obviously, you know, they've got Dak coming back, and he's not just coming back. He has a big time contract. I mean, it's the team being back in California. They didn't train there last year. So there's a lot of just juice. It's kind of like, when you starve yourself on Thanksgiving and you show up to like serve yourself, you don't know where to start. And so I get that people are saying that. What I have continually thought about since the muscle strain first popped up about 2 weeks ago, when Dak did get paid and he had that press conference, because the Cowboys love to have press conferences, he talked about how he realizes the financial commitment that the team is making to him, and he realizes his place within the team and the organization, and that if he's hurt like he was last season, he obviously can't help his team. And so, I don't know if Dak is facing a 3rd and 6 and he's trying to scramble for a first down, if he's going to dive for it, or if he's going to duck out 2 yards shy. Right. That remains to be seen. But I do think that that's maybe what happened here. I think that Dak felt something that was just remotely abnormal, that didn't feel right, that felt weird, that felt, to some level of discomfort. And so he's erring on the side of caution. And, again, to put into perspective, the Cowboys were scheduled to begin practices tomorrow on Tuesday, after 2 days off, after their scrimmage with the Rams, and after their Pro Football Hall of Fame game last week. They have since canceled that practice, and it will now be a mock game situation. So it's been a while since Dak has thrown, and I think, they really just want to make sure that they get to the season. There's no need to rush things, because they know better than anybody, obviously, how important he is to their team.
Absolutely. He's the bread and butter of the team. And I really think, RJ, that Dak Prescott is potentially on the cusp of being a great, great quarterback in this league, mainly because I think mentally he has it, which pains me to say, but then again, there are times when I think, he could also remind us of Tony Romo to an extent, a really, really good football player that doesn't necessarily see playoff success and a road to potentially winning championships. Maybe it's because of the coaching that I'm seeing. Maybe it's because of the front office leadership and the questions there at times. So where do you logically see and think Dak's trajectory is going to be going this season?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, partly because of the landscape of the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Drew Brees has retired, and I don't know that anybody that thought Drew Brees individually was an amazing quarterback the last couple of seasons, but, we're at a day and age where people scoff at this, but, I would take Dak over Tom Brady. Just if I was building a team, and I had to, kind of build around a quarterback for the foreseeable future, obviously Tom Brady's legacy and legend far outweighs and, exceeds whatever Dak or anybody else can hope to do. But, I've said, at least for about a year and a half now, the only quarterbacks who I would build a team around, so to speak, in front of Dak Prescott are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and I had, just like a lot of people, I'd written Aaron Rodgers off last year, and I've since obviously, unfortunately, had to walk that back.
Yes, you have.
But they are the only ones to me. I would take Dak over Russell Wilson. I would take Dak over, just in a football sense, Deshaun Watson. I would take Dak over, Lamar Jackson. That's where he is for me. And I think that was the pace he was on. Now, I think that when you say that word pace, I think a lot of Cowboys fans are unfair to likelihood when they talk about Dak last season, because so many people love to say, well, Dak was on pace for 6,000 yards,
right.
60 touchdowns. That was never going to happen. That wasn't sustainable. And, that's something that Mike McCarthy has talked a lot about, them not wanting to do. They don't want to be the team they were for the first 4.5 games of last season, where Dak was having to throw for 500 yards, because they even counted the game that Dak Prescott got hurt in against the Giants. They were 2-3. And, it's not a formula that leads to a lot of wins generally in the NFL. I think, as far as where he is and kind of, where he ranks on the quarterback spectrum, I don't know of a leader in the NFL at the quarterback position that is stronger in that sense than Dak Prescott. And that's, I know you and I have talked about that a lot, but that's something that has really evolved.
Yeah.
He was an incredible leader, even his rookie year. But I can't think of a Cowboy, at least in the time that I've been covering this team, that is so visibly and so formally the unquestioned leader and pulse of the team. You mentioned Tony Romo. He never had the locker room the way that Dak does. And I don't know if that's just youth, and because it did take Tony Romo a while before he even started in the NFL. But that is such an important factor here.
Well, I think like I said, RJ, I think mentally Dak Prescott has it, and I think that was a difference that you saw from Tony Romo to what Dak Prescott is today. I'm not saying that Tony Romo didn't have the mentality to be a quarterback in this league, but from a leadership standpoint, to be that focal point, again, the bread and butter of what the team is, keeping everything together, that gel. I mean, mentally, Dak Prescott has it.
Yeah, and I think it's a little unfair the way people, talk about Romo in hindsight, but I get it. I mean, there's a lot of data that supports that, he didn't get things done when things were hotter and things were higher pressure. And that really, in that particular sense, Dak Prescott's nothing like that. And that's what's been interesting. I think it has been coaching. I think a great example of this is in 2019 against the Minnesota Vikings. That game was on Sunday Night Football. Is one of, to date, Kirk Cousins' only wins on primetime. And, the Cowboys went down late in the game, and with about 2.5 minutes left, Dak Prescott marched 76 yards in like 90 seconds. I think he was 6 of 7 for like 71 yards, something like that. And the Cowboys get down to the goal line and run the ball twice and lose a yard. And the Cowboys go on to lose that game and just kind of, crap down their leg or pee down their leg because they don't know how to handle it. And Dak's the only guy who does. And so I think as Dak is growing and is becoming a higher authority, and Mike McCarthy does seem to identify that. Right. I think that they'll just kind of lean more into those tendencies and lean more into that skill set of his, which ultimately helps the entire team. Absolutely. Well, moving on, we know how injuries can completely change and alter the course of an NFL team season. We saw it, of course, with Dak last year, and we see it with every team almost in the NFL who goes through that injury bug. Philadelphia Eagles, their offensive line last year, we saw it. Depth is a huge issue for every team, RJ, as we know, and it certainly is going to be an issue, I think, for the Dallas Cowboys this coming year. And when it comes to the Cowboys' offensive line, I'm wondering, how concerned are you about that depth if guys like, Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins, if they have any sort of health issues this season as they did last year, what is that level of concern for you with regard to the depth of the offensive line that really needs to keep Dak Prescott safe back there? It's a really sore point for a lot of Cowboys fans, actually this week of all weeks, because Dak Prescott was hurt, and that was the main story of last year. But the Cowboys lost the second most games to injury of any team in the NFL, according to Football Outsiders' adjusted game loss metric. Only the 49ers lost more. And the Cowboys, they didn't have Lyle Collins for the entire season last year. They lost Tyron Smith after the first 2 games. So collectively, of 32 possible games, they missed 30 from their starting tackles. And so, you're obviously worried, and you're, losing sleep at night that that's going to happen again. Tyron, I would still take Tyron Smith over most left tackles in the NFL, but he is a pretty strong guarantee to miss time. People don't realize he has not played an entire 16-game, now obviously 17-game regular season since Dak Prescott took over. Dak has never had Tyron Smith for an entire regular season. Yeah, I know. That's a bit of a shock, I think, when you first realize it. And so, the Cowboys, not only do they not have any depth, but their depth last year was 2 undrafted free agents, and Brandon Knight, who was a second-year player, and Terrence Steele, who was a rookie. And so the Cowboys did sign Ty Nsekhe, who's kind of a journeyman, had a cup of coffee with Buffalo and the Washington football team over the course of his career. He's from the DFW area, and he was supposed to come in and be that ideal swing tackle. However, he did not look great in the Pro Football Hall of Fame game, which has a lot of people concerned, because if your point of depth is gone, now you are a likely injury away at some point this season, away from Dak Prescott being on the run, having a less experienced, less quality player playing tackle for him in the regular season. I have to say that I get jealous thinking of the Cowboys wide receiver depth chart. I know that's where the team is pretty strong, quite frankly. And with regard to the starters, like I said, I was with my family at Eagles training camp last night, and I'm looking at some of our wide receivers, and I'm thinking, well, Devontae Smith is currently week to week, and I'm seeing Jalen Reagor doing a fumbling the ball out there. And I'm seeing a gentleman named Quez Watkins, who is absolutely fantastic and probably the best wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles during camp by far at this point. And I'm just wondering, I get jealous. I get jealous of you Cowboys fans. So I guess straight up question, which receiver this season is going to shine most, do you think, for the Dallas Cowboys? That is a really fun thing to think about.
It is.
I think, the receivers have obviously surpassed the offensive line for the most talented position group on the team.
Yeah.
And I think, where Cowboys fans have gotten excited at this, we really didn't get to totally enjoy CeeDee Lamb's rookie year. And I know there were a lot of Eagles fans who wanted CeeDee last year. But CeeDee still had an incredible rookie season, and that was not even playing 5 full games with Dak Prescott. And so I think that's the answer. I mean, CeeDee entered training camp with an enormous amount of hype and enormous expectations and has still surpassed them. One of my good friends who works for DallasCowboys.com, David Hellman, he coined a term a few years ago because Dez Bryant was such a freak with what he would do that he would just call things that Dez would do just a Dez thing, because there were things that only Dez could do. And CeeDee has really challenged that, and really, and obviously he wears number 88, but he has really brought shades of the most physical version of Dez that we've seen, and that's because CeeDee isn't necessarily the most physical wide receiver.
Right.
I think that he's still coming into his NFL body, his NFL game, and so. I actually think that, if you look at various over-unders for the Cowboys this season, I would lean unders on most of them, at least offensively, because I do think this defense will be better. I don't think they want to play the same style that they did early on last season. But I would absolutely take every single over when it comes to CeeDee Lamb. I think this is the year that he reminds people that he's better than Justin Jefferson, as great as Justin Jefferson is, and that he is the alpha of the Cowboys wide receivers. I love Amari Cooper. But it does feel like 2021 is going to be the CeeDee Lamb show when it's all said and done.
I think it's interesting to look at Amari Cooper's career with the Dallas Cowboys, and I think there have been, and maybe it's because of Dak being injured last year, just some missed opportunities here and there, especially on the field, watching the Dallas Cowboys as often as we do get to watch them. Do you think, I'm wondering, what type of future Amari Cooper has with the Dallas Cowboys? Could he potentially be involved in a trade at some point, do you think, down the road? Because, listen, the guy's still talented. The guy still understands how to catch the football and get those yards after the catch. So what do you think Amari Cooper's role is within this offense this year and in possibly the years to come?
That's one of the more fascinating kind of subplots surrounding this team. There are a lot of subplots to choose from, to be clear.
There are, yes.
But Michael Gallup is entering a contract year with the Cowboys, and it was actually reported the day before you and I are talking that the Cowboys will not be extending him early, and they will not be extending Randy Gregory either, or any player who's on an expiring contract after this season. And so Michael Gallup has, people forget about him. And I think that doesn't happen, within Cowboys fans. But I do think that somehow there is still not enough national love for him, just because it's easy to kind of flock to Amari and CeeDee.
Right.
And, Gallup might have the strongest chemistry and the best on-field relationship with Dak Prescott. And so that's why I do think that he's in line to really excel this year. But the Cowboys can get out of that deal they gave Amari Cooper last year in 2022 and only eat $6 million against their salary cap. And so there is definitely a very viable, hypothetical where we're in March and the Cowboys decide to cut Amari Cooper, eat the $6 million, and just pay Michael Gallup to pair with CeeDee Lamb for the foreseeable future. I don't know that I would say that's kind of a 50-50 likelihood, with just letting Gallup walk, picking up their comp pick, and having Amari play next to CeeDee. But it is definitely not even like 80-20. I mean, it might be 60-40, it might be 70-30. So I think the Cowboys are really going to pay attention, obviously, to both Amari and Michael Gallup this season. Amari has been wonderful for the Cowboys, well worth the first-round pick that they paid. He's given every Cowboys fan, an incredible amount of, just wonderful memories against the Philadelphia Eagles specifically.
Oh, you ain't just whistling Dixie.
But, he has had, to call them injury concerns feels a little too flagrant. There have just been weird things, and they're not intolerable. They're not even annoying. They're just weird. They're things that have kind of hovered around him since he joined the Cowboys. But he has accomplished an incredible amount of things in his short time with the team. There's only one receiver in Dallas Cowboys franchise history that has had multiple games with over 200 yards receiving. That's Amari Cooper. And he did that in his first 12 games with the team.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say he's boom or bust. Again, he's had just such a unique career with them. But it is definitely very possible that the Cowboys cut him next year. Obviously lock down Michael Gallup and, just realize that you can't keep everybody and they prefer Gallup's future to Amari's.
If you're not following RJ on Twitter, at RJ Ochoa, he is a great follow. Also, again, listen to the SB Nation NFL show. I listen on Apple Podcasts, and also head over to bloggingtotheboys.com, and read some great material over there about the Philadelphia Eagles' main rival here in the NFC East. Moving on, we got to get into the defense here, RJ. I mean, defensively last season, Cowboys had a pretty rough time of it. They were, there were moves made during this offseason to help better this unit, but I'm not sure that they're going to be really dominant by any stretch of the imagination, or maybe even that much more formidable perhaps within the NFC East. So within Cowboys Nation, what you've seen thus far, your gut instincts, your feelings, what's the overall hope for what this defense can be this season?
People love to say in situations like this, like, man, if the defense is just average, the entire, group can be great. I mean, this defense, they challenged for worst in NFL history at times last year.
Yeah, I was being nice before. Yeah.
Yeah. Did the Cowboys, perform a wild makeover on their defense? No, but they did invest. The Cowboys, people love to talk about, like, oh, Jerry Jones will sign whoever. Like, I don't know, what those people watch or pay attention to, but that hasn't been the Cowboys for a long time. And so, they're quite stingy in free agency, but they did, sign a number of players on the defensive side of the ball specifically. And they spent their first 6 draft picks on the defensive side of the ball for the first time in franchise history. So of their 11 picks, I believe 9 were on defense. And so that's the thing. They had 11 picks, one that they picked up from the Eagles, obviously, after that first round trade. And everybody thought, like, oh, they'll be moving, they'll be trading up. They're not going to pick, 10 times of what became 11 times. And ultimately they did. And so there is a huge infusion of talent. Dan Quinn, I do, by the way, anticipate him to be a huge star of Hard Knocks. I think he's going to be one of the more, we all fall in love with certain coaches and players during the season.
Yep.
I think that will be Dan Quinn. And he really has brought an educational aspect to the defense so far throughout training camp. He's such a great teacher, and I think that that's something that's really been missing. People loved Chris Richard because he would yell, he would scream, he would put on cleats and go out and run routes himself on defense, and everybody thought that that's what made a great defensive coordinator, but that just never translated. And so, Micah Parsons so far, and I know that this pains you specifically, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, yeah.
He has been as advertised. And there were, most Cowboys fans were really disappointed with that pick. Everybody wanted one of the corners, but obviously the Cowboys got sniped. They did pick up that 3rd-round pick from Philly. And, I think people didn't like it because nobody wants a linebacker with a top 10 or what became a top 12 pick. It doesn't feel like a great investment of resources. And so, but Micah has really kind of elevated the floor of the linebacker room. He had, it wasn't a play he caused or a moment he caused, but he had the lone turnover recovery for the Cowboys in the Pro Football Hall of Fame game. He just has seemingly been a magnet for the ball. And I don't know that that's a measurable skill, but it's something that I think you're going to be fine with 10 times out of 10. And so thankfully that is the guy that the Cowboys seem to have and seem ready to start when it comes to week 1.
Well, it seems like he's elevating the floor perhaps for the entire defense, which is actually needed here. This is a situation in Dallas where, like you said, I mean, could have potentially been one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense that the NFL has ever seen last season. And to have somebody like Micah Parsons with that leadership, with the dominance, with the capabilities, and going kind of back to what we were saying about Dak Prescott, just that mentality, that aspect, the mental aspect of the game, to be able to elevate the defense and give them that floor. I mean, there's something to be said about that, and that's special no matter what round you're picked in.
Yeah, and I don't know that the same effect would have been felt with Patrick Surtain or J.C.
Exactly.
They're both great players, and I'm certainly excited to track their NFL careers. But Micah has just there is a confidence to him. There is something to his nature that really has so far worked out. And obviously we haven't hit the regular season yet. But I mean, people are really excited, and it's not just, at least to me, the Cowboys have picked defensive players in the first round in years past. It feels nothing like that. It doesn't feel even like Leighton Vander Esch. It certainly doesn't feel like Taco Charlton.
Right.
This feels exciting. This feels promising, and it feels like the Cowboys again, I don't know that they stole somebody in the first round, but it feels like the right player fell to them, and they made the most of it, and that's what they're going to do with Micah Parsons in the future.
Your Cowboys are killing me, RJ. First Sean Lee from Penn State, now Micah Parsons, man. Oh, it's killing me, man, killing me. All right, moving on. This is an exercise I like to get into with all of our guests that jump on our opposition territory shows here. I want to give you a category, and then I'd like for you to give me a player, who you're thinking of in terms of that category, and why specifically that player. So the breakout guy this year for the Dallas Cowboys, who do you think that's going to be?
Oh, man, I don't think it's going to be Micah Parsons because I think he's already broken out. I think people already know who he is. I honestly think Trayvon Diggs, and I think that a lot of Eagles fans might know him because he had 3 interceptions against them last year.
Right.
But he's Stefan's younger brother. He was, not one of the first corners picked last year. And so he's been great too. I think he really might challenge to become one of the top-ish corners in the NFL this season. And so he's from Alabama. He's got all the hallmarks that you love. So Trayvon Diggs is my answer there.
All right. Next category here, the rising star. Who's going to be the rising star for the Dallas Cowboys this coming season?
That's really interesting. Man, I would have said Trayvon Diggs, but I think it's Dan Quinn. I mean, honestly, I think that, I think he's played his cards right. I think, that this happens, obviously. I wouldn't be stunned if Dan Quinn was in the head coaching cycle next year, just because if he has success, if the Cowboys defense is even top 12, top 13, I mean, it will be viewed as, you went there in 1 year, you took one of the worst defenses ever, you made them great. If the Cowboys have some semblance of playoff success, if they win a playoff game, when those things happen to somebody on the Dallas Cowboys, it's a larger effect than normal. And Dan Quinn's already really well known. So I think people like to have their previous, thoughts and convictions confirmed. And so I think that people will be like, I told you, I've been telling you forever, right. Dan Quinn's great. Atlanta just sucks and whatever. And so I could totally see that happening. I
think it's interesting how before we were talking about him, you said he brings that educational aspect of the defense to the Dallas Cowboys. And it's amazing other coaches don't do that. I think rising star Dan Quinn is probably going to happen this year for sure. Next category, RJ, needs to rebound. Who's the player in the Dallas Cowboys that needs to rebound this year?
I might say, I was going to say Tyron Smith, but I might say Lyle Collins now, because Tyron missed last year, and then obviously most of last year, and that's not ideal. But Lyle missed last year because he was out of shape. And, the Cowboys gave him an extension in 2019, and he really outperformed. It really kind of looked like he was one of the better right tackles in the NFL. And every Cowboys fan was singing his praises as last season began. But the fact that he missed the entire season because he wasn't in shape really had him fall out of favor with a lot of Cowboys fans. And so I do think that there is a bit of a redemption tour for him that starts this season, hopefully.
All right, couple more. Who is the comeback kid for the Dallas Cowboys this year? Who's going to get that designation?
I think Dak Prescott's the favorite to win comeback player of the year. Yeah, I know that's boring, but Dak is that's too the fruit is too low hanging there. I had to take it.
All right, I had a feeling you were going to pick him. And last but certainly not least, the dark horse MVP. Who's going to be the dark horse MVP this year for the Dallas Cowboys?
Oh man, I might say Zeke.
I thought you were going to say Zeke.
I'm going to say it. I'm trying to mix it up too. I will say everybody, obviously as training camp begins, you hear that everybody's in the best shape of their lives, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Zeke really is in better shape than he has been maybe ever in his time with the Cowboys. And, chalk that up to whatever you want. The Cowboys, it would still not be fun, but they could move on from him this coming offseason.
Right.
And so maybe that's part of it. I think part of it is that, the expectation is no longer around Zeke. It's no longer the Zeke show. There's so many other stars and playmakers that I don't want to say he's like fallen into obscurity, but he's not the face of things anymore. And I also think, before the NFL, I think Zeke had lost like 3 games ever in his life between high school and Ohio State. And so, and I know that also upsets you as a Penn State guy.
Absolutely.
But so, and the Cowboys had struggled before last season in Zeke's career. They had missed the playoffs, right? But they had never been a joke, and that was the case last year. Like they were just a joke. I think people forget the Cowboys were flexed off of primetime football. They were flexed out of Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
And so that has never been Zeke, and in any part of his life at any level. And so I could see him taking that personally and kind of channeling that. I think a lot of them have. Not trying to, just look at things through a rose-colored glass or anything like that. But I do think that the Cowboys want to play stronger defense and want to run the ball late in games. And so I could see, Zeke almost had 1,000 yards last year, and people, feel like that was a year off for him.
Right.
But 17 games, I could see him, hitting 1,300 yards, maybe not leading the league in rushing, but ideally piling those up in the fourth quarter. And then at the end of the day, people saying, well, Zeke was back, that's why the offense is back, et cetera. So I do think that Zeke is going to be a huge force of what they want to do.
Again, on Twitter, at RJ Ochoa, the SB Nation NFL show, bloggingtheboys.com. RJ, man, thank you so much for joining us here on Opposition Territory this week here, man. Keep up the great work you're doing, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you down the road.
Of course, Jeff. Hope you have a great fall, great football season. All the luck to your Nittany Lions. I hope they win the Big Ten. But, when it comes to Sundays, I hope it's nothing but misery in terms of on-field production. But health, wealth, happiness, and joy to you and your family, of course.
It's always great talking to RJ, and I have to say over all these years that he has been so wonderful to come on the show. The one thing I love about RJ is his honesty about his Dallas Cowboys team, but really, he's a football fan at heart. And it is going to be interesting to see what the Dallas Cowboys do this season as one of the chief rivals of the Philadelphia Eagles, and how this Eagles team could potentially compete with a team as formidable as Dallas. We don't like to say it, but folks, that is the reality. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be contending for the NFC East this year. What could they possibly do in the playoffs? Who knows? But really, when you come down to looking at this NFC East, it's not going to be the Giants. It's not going to be the Eagles. The Washington football team and the Dallas Cowboys are going to be vying for who wins this division. It is going to be fascinating. It's also going to be fascinating to see over the next few weeks these preseason games, the depth that RJ and I talked about. So I think it's really, really important to note that anything can happen with injuries. Anything can happen with regard to depth pieces, individuals that are shining on the field. Some may take a step back. That's going to determine the fortune of these teams that we're following. So that being said, everybody, we're going to end it there this week. We've got a great regular show coming to you this week. Kelly Hinkle from the BSH Radio Podcast, BroadStreetHockey.com. She is going to be joining Len and I this week for a discussion about the Philadelphia Flyers, the offseason that the team has had. General Manager Chuck Fletcher has made some moves, some really great moves, some questionable moves as well. Len and I are going to get into it with Kelly this week, and we've also got a lot of other Philly sports talk coming your way. Also wanted to mention, if you have not already, head over to our Patreon platform, patreon.com/PhiladelphiaPST. You can get some ad-free content over there. There's a tier where you can support us with $1 a month. That just helps to support our overall endeavor here at the show. And then we have a $5 a month tier where you get some podcasts, kind of like how RJ and I were just talking, interview-based style, really getting into the weeds, having honest discussions about Philly sports teams or about the sports world in general, college football that we're talking about, sports media. Lots of great conversations with a lot of great guests over on our Patreon platform. Again, on our $5 tier, our Philly Central tier, patreon.com/PhiladelphiaPST. Head over there and check it out. So that's going to do it for us here. I'm going to stop yammering. Take care, and we will catch you next time.
Have you been to Express lately? People can't get enough of their clothes. They're like instant confidence boosters. The jeans come in a temp control fabric that keeps you comfortable no matter the weather. And the t-shirts, hands down, they'll feel like they're made of the softest fabric you've ever worn. And get this, the suits have stretch and look sharp. Like, what? How do they do that? Everyone's raving about the newest looks from Express. Just check out the 5-star reviews. See for yourself and shop the latest at express.com and in stores. Sports have a way of bringing us all together. And at Sleeper, we developed a fantasy platform designed to make leagues more fun and personal. Sleeper includes an integrated chat and every feature you could want for your NFL, NBA, and even esport leagues. Plus, it's completely free with no ads. See why millions have made Sleeper the fastest growing fantasy platform. Download Sleeper on the App Store or Google Play today.